Thank you again for joining us today on the broadcast. It is Tuesday, not Monday. It feels like Monday because yesterday was the Victoria Day holiday here in Canada. So it is the first work day of the week, so it does feel like Monday as per usual. So I've decided to kind of create this new little series here. It's going to be called What the Diff. I believe there is a similar kind of thing. I'm sure there's lots of similar kind of things going on. What the Diff is not exactly a uncommon term. So I'm sure there's lots of different people using it online, on TV and movies, all that sort of stuff. But it is common enough that I thought I'd use it here. So this is the What the Diff Real Estate Edition, I guess you could say. And this week, we're going to try and cover a different topic, hopefully every week, at least once a week. So we're looking at things like the difference between joint tenants and tenants in common, all kinds of real estate type terms, like what's the difference between a firm sale and a conditional sale, or what we usually call a firm offer, a cash offer versus a conditional offer, and all these kind of things like that. So very basic, very casual conversation just to give you a general idea of what the practical application of all these terms are. And if there are any questions or if you want to talk about it more in depth because you're interested in a specific topic, I'm always available to do so. But these particular videos are meant to be about maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes long, and we'll just go over a specific topic, like I said, in the practical, everyday implications of it. And then, like I said, if there are any further questions, we can always meet in person, chat, and talk more in depth. So today's topic is condominiums versus cooperatives. So these are two different types of home ownership, with specific reference to what's happening here in Ontario, Canada, and more specifically even into the Hamilton area. So most people have heard of condominiums. So if you look at these big high-rises in like downtown Toronto, and probably in the city where you live, there's a bunch of them here in Hamilton as well. There are rental apartments. So there are apartment buildings that are meant to be just rentals or owned by property management companies, and then you can go there, you can rent out an apartment. But there are also condominiums, and condominiums are places which are actually owned. It is a type of home ownership, and that is in opposition to or in contrast to freehold ownership. So most people who own a detached family home are freehold owners. It is what's called fee simple ownership by the more technical real estate definition of it. But basically, most people who own homes in a subdivision or even in older parts of the city, in the downtown core of the city, are freehold owners. They own the house completely. They own the land that it sits on, and within restrictions of city bylaws and laws in general, they can pretty much do whatever they want with their home. They can paint the outside. They can fix the roof. All the interior modifications, as long as there's no heritage designations or anything weird like that, or they're doing something that's not allowed by local city bylaws. Like some local bylaws won't allow you to put up clotheslines. So you can't have an exterior clothesline, or you can't have a fence, or if you do have a fence, it has to be of a certain height. It has to be with respect to the different property lines and setbacks and all that kind of stuff. But most people are familiar with freehold home ownership. That's probably the most common type of home ownership in Canada, and probably most places. But then there's condominiums. So then condominiums are a variation of that. The most common type of condominium ownership are high-rise apartments. So the same as the rental apartment buildings, but they're condominiums. What that means is that when they were building the building, they decided that it was going to be a condominium. And there's a whole bunch of legal things that they need to do. They need to file a declaration. They need to file a constitution, which basically means it's all the legal registration of the building, the rules in the building. So a condominium will have its own set of rules and contained within the bylaws for the condominium. So the condominium may not allow pets, may not allow smoking, a whole bunch of stuff like that. You may not be able to run your own home-based business. So if you're a real estate agent like myself who works out of your home and you're going to have clients coming and going, that may not be allowed. And there's what's called common areas. So the ownership in a condominium is for the unit itself. So there's a condominium unit. If you happen to be in a townhouse subdivision, you can also be a condominium, and you own essentially the interior of your townhouse. The exterior, for the most part, is maintained by a condominium corporation. So as part of the Articles of Incorporation, the building itself is run by a corporation. And so that corporation, it It can involve homeowners. Those are the kinds that you probably want, or the more desirable types where the actual unit owners are as part of the board of the condominium, and they get to make decisions about how the building is run. And we'll talk about how that affects homeowners. But basically, you own the interior, and you have a common ownership over all the spaces in between. So if you think of a rental apartment building or a regular apartment building, a condominium building, the hallways in between the units, the elevators, the lobby, if the building has a party room or a swimming pool, tennis courts, any of the exterior spaces, these are common areas. So everybody who lives in the building has access to this, but you also have a responsibility to maintain it. And that figuring out how much responsibility you have is measured by how large your unit is. So they measure the square footage of your unit. So the units can range in size. Some buildings have condominium units as small as 300 to 400 square feet, all the way up to 1,500, 2,000 square foot penthouse apartment condominium type units. And the larger your unit, basically, the more of responsibility you have over the common elements. And so if you have a 2,000 square foot unit, for example, you would pay probably twice as high a monthly condominium fee as a 1,000 square foot unit. Basically how they figure that out. So again, mentioning that, there is a monthly condominium fee. So in addition to owning the unit, you have to purchase the actual unit itself. You're responsible for maintenance inside that unit. So anything that needs to be done inside that unit, it is all yours. It's your responsibility, just like a regular home. If you wanted to renovate the bathroom or change the flooring, you had to do some plumbing repairs to the sink or the toilet or the shower, change light fixtures, all that kind of stuff. That is your responsibility as a homeowner. There are some restrictions based on the bylaws with things like renovations because you are attached to other units. So sometimes you do have to obtain permission from the condominium corporation, from the board, to do certain types of renovations if it may impact the adjoining units. And that includes things like plumbing, electrical. If you're changing the flooring, for the most part, you don't really necessarily need to. Again, it just depends on the rules. But you may have to obtain permission for contractors. They may only be able to work certain times of the day. They may only be able to access like freight elevators or the common elevators for certain periods of time, so not to inconvenience the other homeowners. Now, for the most part, condominium buildings or townhouses, the exterior of the building is the responsibility of the condominium corporation. And part of what you pay for in your condominium fees are the expenses to maintain the exterior of the building, for general insurance on the building itself in case there's any damages to the building, and a small portion of what you give every month goes towards what's called the reserve fund. So the reserve fund is there to estimate what the costs are going to be in the future. So if you're maintaining the exterior of the building, that includes things like the roofs, the exterior windows, brick face of the building or stucco face of the building, the maintenance for the swimming pool, the maintenance for the exercise room if you have one, the hallways, the lobbies, like if you have to replace the carpets in the hallways or paint and that sort of thing, change light fixtures, regular maintenance every day like changing light bulbs and all that kind of stuff. If you are paying your superintendent to live in the building and take care of all these issues, they sort of project out in the future. They know based on engineers' estimates that like an elevator might last like 30 years before it needs to be replaced. So they have to start planning ahead about how much is it going to cost us to replace this elevator in 30 years. And they have to basically start putting aside money ahead of time to account for that. So that's the basics of condominium ownership. You can get much more detailed into it. There are, you said, rules, the amenities available in the building. You can buy a brand new condominium, which means it was they broke ground and they built this new building. In that case, CMHC carry-on warranties apply. So new home builder warranties apply in that case. You can buy a resale condo, so somebody else has owned it and then put it up for sale, just like a regular home. And then you purchase that resale condo. If it's within the first 7 years of the building being built, that carry-on warranty is transferable to you as the new homeowner. But if you are in what's called a conversion building, so they've taken like an old school and they've converted it into condos, they have not made a new foundation. They built a condo on top of an existing structure. New home warranty does not apply. There may be some little stipulations on different kinds of insurance that the builder may to offer you in that case. But for the most part, if you are buying a condominium in a converted school or something like that, there is no carry-on warranty. So there is no new homeowner warranty that applies to that because it's not a new structure. It's not a new home. It's a conversion of an existing building. So that's what happens there. So that's the general things about condominiums versus freehold. And then there's cooperatives. So cooperatives sometimes confuse people because they do operate on a day-to-day basis, much like a condominium does. So you have a monthly cooperative fee that you pay instead of a condominium fee. The fee actually does go towards the day-to-day operations of the cooperative, just like in a condominium. You own, or you don't own, but you do live in a specific unit within the condominium, or within the cooperative, sorry. Generally speaking, they are in buildings just the same way as high-rise condominium apartments are. You have some restrictions. Again, you have your own local rules and regulations for that specific building that govern how and what you can do in the building, as far as things like renovations are concerned, whether or not you're allowed to rent or sublet out your apartment. For most part, in condominiums you can with certain restrictions. But within cooperatives, generally speaking, you can't. So if you are looking to buy a cooperative and then rent it out at some point in the future, whether it's a long-term rental or an Airbnb type situation, for the most part in cooperatives you can't. Mainly because the ownership type is different. So in a cooperative, you don't actually own land. So in a freehold purchase, you own the house and you own the land that it sits on. In a condominium, you own the unit that you're in, and you have shared ownership of all the common elements, including the land that the building sits on and all the hallways and that sort of thing. If you're in a townhouse complex that's a condominium, you have shared ownership over the roadways and the green spaces and that are in between all the townhouse buildings. In a cooperative, you don't. In a cooperative, you actually buy shares in a corporation that owns the building. With your purchase of those shares, so essentially you're buying into a business almost, you are entitled to the occupancy of a specific unit for the most part. So you have the right to occupy a unit. People do sell in Hamilton. You can buy and resell cooperatives. That is allowed, but you have to obtain approval by the board. So when you're selling a condominium unit, if you purchase a condominium and decide to sell it down the road, you don't have to get approval from the condo corporation as to who you're selling the condo to. Basically, that's acts just like a regular home purchase. They agree to abide by all the condominium rules when they are buying a condominium, but otherwise it's just like a regular home purchase. And as long as you choose the people that you want to purchase, they have the money to buy and all that sort of stuff, you can sell to pretty much anybody that you want. With a cooperative, the person who is going to be buying your shares in the cooperative, they're not buying the unit, they are buying your shares in the cooperative, has to be approved by the board, because it is much more like a business transaction, like you are buying a part of a business. So the members of the board don't want anybody to be a part of the business who has things, generally speaking, has things like bankruptcies in their past, who has a poor criminal record. So you probably have to submit a police check. So if you have a criminal past of some sort, that may go against you. If you don't agree to abide by the board rules as far as the cooperative is concerned, they can deny your application basically to join, and the person who owns those shares cannot complete the transaction, cannot sell those shares to you. So there are a few more restrictions that way. Because you're not buying land, because you're not actually owning a physical space of land and you're buying shares, generally speaking, you can't get a mortgage to purchase a cooperative. There may be some options through different things like credit unions and that sort of thing that may offer products for that. But the traditional type mortgage that you would get for a regular freehold or condominium purchase is not available for a cooperative purchase. Generally speaking, it is a cash purchase. So whether you have actual cash or you're taking money out of a line of credit, you have to buy it cash, like you would buy anything else. Kind of like buying a car, kind of like buying a boat. So you can take out a loan, you can do that sort of thing, but a mortgage in particular is not, generally speaking, available to you when you're buying a cooperative. As a result, it's difficult for people to buy cooperatives because you need a large sum of money or access to a large sum of money. So they are, generally speaking, less expensive than condominiums. because on a condominium you can get a mortgage and the financing is just easier, so you have access to a great amount of money. So there is more people who would qualify for that, more demand for that type of product, so the prices are higher. So cooperatives, generally speaking, are cheaper, but come with all those restrictions that we mentioned. So hopefully that makes sense. There is a market for all these things. I do have clients that look for most often a condominium, but I do have some I've helped over the years. I'm currently helping one now who is looking for specifically a cooperative. There are some advantages. People do like the idea that for the most part in cooperatives, they are owner-owned and occupied. There are in very few cases rental situations in cooperatives, so you can, generally speaking, be assured that if somebody is living in the building, they're actually an owner, which is appealing to some people. They don't necessarily want to live in a building where the overwhelming majority of the units in a building are short-term or medium-term rentals, or possibly even Airbnb situations where you have a fairly revolving door, basically, of people coming in for 1 night, 2 days, 3 days, week-long rentals, and so you have new people living in the building at all times. They prefer to live in a place where the people who live there own the building. They, for whether it's perception or reality, that they believe that the homeowners will take greater care of the building, be more respectful of the other owners in the building. Who's to say? But that is the perception, at least, and that fits people's lifestyles. You are, generally speaking, in a cooperative more involved in the building. Like I said, in a condominium, you could have a separate board who is made up of people who are not necessarily homeowners, or you can have a completely homeowner-driven board, or you can have a mix somewhere in between. Generally speaking, in a cooperative, everybody has a vote. Everybody's technically speaking part of the board, even though there is a CEO, that type position. There is a hierarchy there, but everybody in the cooperative has a vote, and this is generally speaking by bylaws or by the actual Cooperative Housing Act, and there's a Condominium Act. So there is actual legislation that governs these things. These aren't just sort of ad hoc type of housing that people have come up with. So that's basically how it works. There's a whole bunch of people jumping on the feed there. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down below or send me a message. I just wanted to give you a general idea of what the differences between a condominium and a cooperative were. It's the first sort of episode, if you want to say, of the new series ongoing. This is Remax Geek TV, and this is your sort of What the Diff kind of program that we'll have running every so often. The next one up, I think, will be joint tenants versus tenants in common. So we'll go over those type of arrangements on a purchase. Generally speaking, what the liabilities are, what your rights are, what you can and can't do in terms of resale, as far as that goes. So that'll be the next episode up. I do appreciate you all joining in. It is a kind of rainy type day here in Binbrook, but this has been Remax Geek TV. I am Tony, the Geeky Agent. I do appreciate you all coming in. If you are looking for me online, you can find me at Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. That is where the bulk of my content is, but I'm also on Snapchat, Twitter, Tumblr, and Pinterest. But Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram is where I hang out most often. If you want to get in touch with me directly, you can call me or text me, 289-237-9896, or email me, tony@thegeekyagent.com. If you're looking at me, I keep saying looking at me today, I don't know why. It's been a long weekend, I'm tired. You can find me at thegeekyagent.com, or if you're looking for a home in Hamilton, go to hamiltonlifestylesearch.com, which will direct you to the home search portion of thegeekyagent.com. So I really do appreciate you all tuning in, as mentioned. Please keep looking here. If you're on YouTube, look around for the subscribe button somewhere around there so you don't miss any future videos. We're going to have more interviews coming up. We did just announce today, the Ontario Real Estate Association put out, in conjunction with Ryerson University, a report regarding millennials in the GTA and their difficulties in purchasing a home and what the future holds for us. There's about 700,000 millennials in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area that will be looking to purchase a home within the next decade. So we're thinking that amounts to about 500,000, about 500,000 new homes that we're going to need just for the children of the people who already live here. That doesn't even count people moving to the province from other provinces. immigration and refugees and all that sort of stuff that's moving to this area. So we do have some challenges ahead. I've been talking to and I put out invitations for our local MPP candidates to get their party's take on what exactly do they plan to do with housing to make it easier for people, to relieve the pressure on the supply issue in terms of new housing. All these kind of things. And I did an earlier interview last week with Judy Partridge from the Ontario Liberal Party, and I'm waiting to hear back from all the other candidates to see if they are willing, able, and have the time to sit down and have a chat with me about all these issues. So, as I mentioned, please keep checking back here. And again, I do appreciate you all. I really, really do. I love you all to death. And until next time, as always, I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.